Hey everybody, I just finished one of the more incredible episodes that I've ever had the pleasure of doing in 115 episodes. If you're interested in the world of venture, in the world of technology, or just the inspiring stories of how young people can sometimes follow unconventional paths to find their way into their careers and then find their sweet spot, you're going to want to listen to this episode with myself and Erika Bricky having just a terrific conversation in which she shares not only her personal story and her personal journey, as she says she face planted her way into technology as a career, but the inspired viewpoints and particular perspective that she brings to her work at ARC, a startup bank that's on the rise in Silicon Valley and beyond, and just to the industry at large, to the investment part of the industry, to the entrepreneurial economy, as we call it as a whole. She is undoubtedly a great example of what I would call an entrepreneurial thinker. And I was grateful to have the chance to spend an hour with her. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode as much as we did making it. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. Today, I am really excited. I mean, let's be honest, I'm really excited most days, but today I'm really excited to be joined by one of my favorite young leaders in the entrepreneurial world that I play in, Erika Bricky. Erika is the only other self-described relationship capitalist that I know. And that distinction is particularly befitting her because she really is the connective human tissue behind the scenes in every corner of the startup world that she touches. She attacks her days with a founder's mentality and a knack for spotting talent. Erika navigates the landscape of early stage investment like a seasoned pro. She hails from Northern California, and she's now back home there in Silicon Valley, although we met here in LA. And she's all about nurturing the next generation of startup leaders, kind of in all facets of the industry. Over the course of her still early career, she's already gained invaluable experience across the industry, from being a chief of staff and a venture partner at Operate to lending her experience or expertise as a member of the council, and now growing relationships as part of the team at startup banking rocket ship ARC, which she'll tell us all about later. But her journey didn't start there. Right. So from her days at Palo Alto Networks to a stint at Same Day Health, Erika's career has been a masterclass in building relationships and growing sales organizations. Gee, maybe that's why I like her so much. She's not just about closing deals. She's about cultivating talent and shaping the future of companies. Her impact and presence across social media, but also just about any city that she lands in for more than like 10 minutes, adds just this immense positive energy, and it reverberates through the industry. So I'm grateful to have her as part of the Entrepreneurial Thinkers family now. She's already been a longtime friend, but Erika, welcome.
Hi, what a good intro.
Hey, it's you. It's just words written about you.
It's really, really kind. I was smiling so big because, every time someone asks you to write a bio about yourself, you always kind of give them like a lackluster version.
Right.
And that was just so much better than anything I've ever given anyone. So I'm going to need to borrow it.
You can, I'll take it out, cut it, send it to you. And you know Perfect. What? I mean, like kind of in a cameo like way, if you want to have me just follow you around and like introduce you to people with the podcaster voice, like that could be arranged.
Will you wear the headphones in public if you're making an intro 100%. In real life?
Like if we just cut the wire just for effect, just get me some beats. Maybe we'll go that route. Yeah. Perfect. There we go. It's awesome. It's great to see you. I'm grateful for your time. Thanks for joining us from the ARC offices in San Francisco. Yes. We'll talk a little bit more about ARC and all you're doing there with them and what they're doing. But first things first, like the root of our relationship is the entrepreneurial world. The root of my fascination with your work and just how you exist in the world on a daily basis is your passion for entrepreneurship. So my first question is just to cue you up. Why do you love the entrepreneurial world so much?
I didn't know a lot about it when I was younger. And then I ended up in it by accident, which I'm happy to tell that story.
Okay.
Also, but I joined a small venture fund in LA where we met unexpectedly. I hadn't been planning to. And I always say like I face planted into venture capital, but in that role, I got to meet thousands of entrepreneurs, and easily. I consistently every day am so inspired and just in awe of people chasing their dreams. It sounds so corny, but it's so true. And I even posted a video right before this where I talked about going to visit some founders, and they just have such an incredible backstory. And it was like, I was floating after seeing them because I was just so in awe of their commitment and grit and like tenacity. And I think to me, watching other people do that gets me up in the morning. And so I continue to put myself in situations where that's like my primary objective, is spending as much time with entrepreneurs as possible, because it's very energizing and it's really inspiring. And I'm obsessed with it. I think it's like so cool and fun to watch people make things and try and achieve like really large goals and always smash them. It's just awesome.
Good for you. And also, what an important part of the puzzle, right, of the entrepreneurial journey is, and I would put us in the same category now, because neither of us are directly entrepreneurs building something. I'm building this media business, but I think of that very differently than the tech startup world that you and I played in. It requires people like you and I, right? It requires encouragers and chief encourager, I would call you, right? The cheerleaders, the boosters, the people who bring that energy. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm curious, do you feel like one of the things I feed off of is other people's aspirations? Like, so it's just like this aspirational, not just ambitious, but this aspirational energy that most entrepreneurs bring every day just to life. Like that is just like mainline that for me.
What's so funny about you saying that is yesterday I was eating dinner with a friend who is a founder of a tech company. And he asked me a question like, do you think of me as a founder? And I was shocked that he even asked me that, because I of course do. But I said, yes, of course I do, because you not only have like really big aspirations, but you feed off of everyone around you's aspirations, which then in turn like inspires me a lot. Yeah. And so at the bare minimum, I think that is like the biggest founder quality, which is wanting to achieve something grand and big and feeling inspired to wanting those things. Like the amount of people that don't get excited about other people's aspirations is a much bigger number
right,
than I remember, because I am so excited by the goals and ambitions of others. And there are people that are not affected at all.
Yeah. There's a reason that people like you stand out, right? In the general dynamic of life, right? Is that what you think is normal, or how I might wake up in the morning and think like, well, this doesn't everybody look like approach the day like this? Right. The answer is no, they don't.
No, Erika. Not at all.
Right. Yes.
That's here funny. In San Francisco, especially, it's strange because I think there's like, everyone says everyone's in tech, and there's like a startup bubble and there's a big tech bubble. And then there's a bunch of normal people that don't care about any of this. And my roommates, in fact, aren't in tech at all. And they didn't even know that the startup community was as like vibrant or large as it actually is, because they just never touched it. And then I moved in with them and they were shocked to know how much goes on and how many people know each other.
I think that's not only healthy for any community, right? Because every community would reflect that same kind of profile if we actually get out of our own tech bubble. Totally. But I think it's probably also important for you, right? It's probably healthy for you to have that balance at home of like your cat and then grounded people who have interests that are completely disparate from yours.
One of my roommates is an arborist.
Oh, see, that's just freaking awesome. First of all, I like this roommate already.
I can send her a picture of any tree and be like, "What is this?" In fact,
all right, I'm gonna send you a picture when we're done of the tree that I famously ran into and got my concussion from back in December, and I want to know the name of that type of tree.
Will do. We can identify a tree, but exactly, I tell people that it allows me to have 1 foot in in real life.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to become engulfed by tech startup stuff. Like,
no, 100%
if I wanted to, I could plant 2 feet firmly in this world and never see my family, only ever work, only ever talk about work. Yep. Even this morning, I watched the new OpenAI update for the new model they have, and it's all I could talk about for at least an hour afterwards. And I was like, relax.
Yeah. Right.
There's more to life than GPT. I mean,
that's okay because you're in the context of your work day, right?
That's
like
true.
If that's what you're talking about tonight with your roommates at 2 a.m, like over a glass of wine or something like that, that's probably like, okay, shut it down, turn it off, right? But Good for you. All right. So here's a question. You face planted into this industry, you say, right? So let's go back. Like, let's peel the clock back a little bit to even younger Erika, right? So tell us about your journey from your early roles in marketing, supply chain operations, sales, to becoming an early stage investor. And then maybe even weave in some of how those experiences helped shape your desire to now kind of bring that along and be like, okay, I want to be an investor. I want to play in this world, but I want to do it based on these things that I already know, right? I don't just singularly want to be this. Yeah. Tell us about that. Tell us about kind of where you started professionally and how it shaped who you are now.
I grew up in a very small town in Central California, so about 2 hours away from where I live here in San Francisco. And my family was working class, nothing crazy or special. When I got to college, I'd never been on an airplane. And right. I think at that point in time, you were flying to South America weekly.
I was somewhere. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I had never been on an airplane, and I really had like this chip on my shoulder about not being fancy, not having money, not having pedigree. I went to UCLA, but the kinds of people that go to that school cover a very wide range of like levels of income, sort of representation, both economically and more on the like gender, nationality, etc. side. And I didn't really know what to do with myself at first. Like, I found it to be very overwhelming. I thought, oh wow, like I don't deserve to be here. I didn't go to private school. I'm paying for this education with financial aid and scholarships, and you use your parents' credit card to like buy beers. Right. And it was just a totally other world. And so I kind of had always wanted to do big things. I really wanted to leave my small town when I was a teenager. And when I got to UCLA, I realized, I can't have this stuff unless I go do something very important. And so, I worked my first year of undergrad, but it wasn't really until my second year that I got an opportunity to work at Tinder. Okay. They were relaunching their student ambassador, campus ambassador program. A friend made an introduction to someone, and I was one of their first campus ambassadors like ever. Wow. And I spent a year working with them, and I actually was able to get a $50,000 college scholarship from Tinder with
Holy cow.
Job. Holy cow, indeed.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Tinder. Right.
Dude, seriously, it's still like probably top 3 craziest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
It's incredible.
And they basically, there was probably like 30 of us total in the country, and we had a part of taking the job was an opportunity to win the scholarship, and I applied. And I think something that I still talk about when I tell this story is that in the essay I wrote, like, here's what I've learned from this. And also, I know that I did not do my hardest work during these moments. And I called myself out. Like, for example, when we hosted this thing, like, I think I missed the mark on all of this stuff. And they gave it to me anyway. And I think there's that part of the story represents.
They didn't give it to you anyway. They gave it to you probably in part because of that.
Yeah.
Right. That level of self-awareness and openness.
I'm incredibly earnest as a person, and you probably know this about me from our interactions. And I didn't want to be dishonest in that. And so it's like, if I'm saying like, I deserve this for this reason, I deserve this because I need it the most. Mm-hmm. And also because I know that I can do better and work harder and show you how. And that was like my first tech job. And then I ended up by the grace of God, I think, getting an internship opportunity at Palo Alto Networks, which at the time I didn't know anything about. Now that I have the job that I'm in now, it's like the most successful by multiple venture-backed company in history ever. Right. Yeah. Which is insane, because
at the time you don't have that context. You just think like big
tech company in Santa Clara.
Yeah, stable company, like cool, right? Like here's my way in the door.
Firewalls, like I don't know anything about these, and I was an intern there for 2 summers, and I made a lot of friends. And my first summer, I interned in the people organization. It wasn't the perfect fit for me, and so I did what Erika Bricky knows how to do, which is meet a bunch of people. And so I met the senior vice president of worldwide operations. Her name is Bonnie French. She is probably like one of the most successful people in the world to me. I'm obsessed with her. And I said, can I be an intern for you next summer? And she said, sure. And so I did. And the reason why I asked her that is because she gave a talk to all the interns, and she said her most important professional lesson is that if you never ask, you will never get. And so then I asked her.
Amen.
And I
got. Man, oh man. Yeah. That's an enduring lesson for all of us every day.
It's so hard. It never gets easier to ask for the things that you desire, but I've learned now as a seller, which I'm happy to talk about later too, that if you ask for things, you'll probably get them. But if you don't ask for them, you'll definitely never get them. Like, people say no, that's better than never getting an answer, generally.
100% true. 100% true. So in that moment, just for a second, in that moment, are you like, okay, cool, I'm inside of tech, like I'm inside of like, and now I think the answer is no, but right? Like,
bug is beginning to fester, but it didn't really change for me until I left that job at Palo Alto Networks to go to a startup.
Okay.
I left my full-time job at Pan. I was living here in the Bay Area. It was COVID. I was miserable. I missed my friends from college in LA. I didn't feel like the work I was doing was right for me. I wasn't working as hard as I could have been, and I needed to get out of there. And so I joined a healthcare startup called Same Day Health. I spent about a year there. It was a rocket ship that none of us really knew what to do with. We were selling COVID tests. I was on like the B2B sales ops side, and I sold millions and millions of dollars of COVID tests to movie producers because they needed them, and I had them.
They did that. I can attest to the fact that they needed them because my daughter was working on a TV show at that point. I think they got tested
every day,
like four times a week.
Yep. Yeah. And so my team and I kind of made up this idea in which they need those things. How do we create like a B2B side of our clinic to cover the needs of the LA area entertainment industry? And that's what we did. And so I was spending 8 hours a day on the phone talking to producers, safety coordinators, studios. I ended up hiring a bunch of salespeople. I built a customer success team. I was like 23.
And this was your brainchild. Like, this was what your boss didn't tell you, go do this.
Oh, my boss definitely did say, go do this, but I became the go do this person.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I think we need to sell more to the studios. Go figure that out.
In my family, we have this spot at the table called the go and get it chair. So if you sit in this chair during dinner and somebody needs a paper towel or they need to grab the salt, you're the person if you're in the chair. And I sat myself in the go and get it chair at Same Day Health. I did not know that at the time. But for example, we were launching concierge medicine in Washington, D.C. I did not work on concierge medicine. I was not a recruiter. They said, we need to hire 50 nurses in the next 2 weeks. And someone said, ask Erika. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and I interviewed 250 nurses in 5 days. And we hired the 50 we needed.
You've been a relationship capitalist since like high school, probably. And just we just didn't know what to call it.
Yeah, I didn't know what to call it until I saw it on your LinkedIn, and then I stole it and put it on my LinkedIn.
Because it's literally the best description of this, and your story is so similar to my story when I was younger and or now in a different way. But it's the best description. Humbly, I say this: it's the best complete description I've ever come up with.
It's what I do, and
it's literally what you do.
I'm so good at downplaying it. It's like my expert skill, like pretending like my job and what I do with my brain isn't hard. But one of my friends was like, I can't draw lines between people that live in my brain the way you can.
Yep.
And I forget that that's just like not everyone's natural skill. In the same way that I'm not like a systems thinker. Like if you...
Yeah, ironically, I love that you use that analogy. Ironically, I think you or I in this context are systems thinkers. We just, the systems and the pieces of those puzzles are people, right? Yeah. So instead of nodes on a network in a technology sense of that word, those words, right? You and I understand, we see people, and this is not in a transactional or usury way, but we see people as nodes on a big global human network.
It's
And then
true.
we think about how they connect, how they serve each other. That becomes the superpower, right? Over time, is when I was young in my career, or your era, comparably, I had that same gift that you have, and I mostly deployed it like you would have. Like, okay, cool. Like, how does this serve the purpose of what I'm working on? How does this serve the
Mm-hmm.
mission? How does that close the deal? How does that get that customer what they need, et cetera? Later in life, as it's refined and kind of morphed, it matured. Right now, I see like how incredible it can be when you or I enter a room and we do what we do, and how it can affect people, and how it can then,
Mm-hmm.
those people carry that energy forward into their relationships, and then and all of a sudden it's this like massive network effect that
Yeah.
you and I you didn't necessarily do a ton to kick off, but you did the things at the beginning. You had that, what's it called? What's the chair? The go and get it chair?
The go and get it chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do me a favor. Tell me, it's a great road, right? And it's entrepreneurial thinker at your earliest stages. We didn't know what we called that then either. Right.
Yeah.
But tell me, I know it hasn't all been easy, right? I know there are roadblocks. I know that for a fact. Right. And so give us a couple examples of times in your career when being the youngest person in the room, or maybe even being the only woman in the room in tech, right? What did that feel like, and what lessons have you taken away from that you use to bolster your confidence now on a daily basis?
I think being a young woman, like both of those things together, makes it a lot harder in
Yeah.
many cases. I think something that's really helpful is having a lot of experience gives you internal confidence. However, having a lot of experience, even if you tell people about it, may not make them trust your acumen, aptitude, ability. But if you know what you're capable of, it allows you to still sort of create the same output. What I remember when I first started going to networking events in LA, it was like kind of the early end of like the ZERP crypto 2021, 2020. It was the later end of that sort of 2021 boom. And this thing happens in venture, and it's very specific to emerging managers and emerging venture funds, where people will look you dead in the eye and be like, what's your AUM? And for those listening, if you don't know what that means assets under management, which essentially means how much money do you have to invest out of your venture fund? I worked at two little tiny funds, and we didn't have very much. And so when you say, oh yeah, we have $5 million in our vehicle, and someone from a fund with billions of dollars is looking at you, they immediately scoff. They're like, oh, that's cute. Haha. And what's so funny is that when I started in that role, that really bothered me. And then I was able to win allocation and deals like instead of those people later on in the career. And I was like, it's okay, whatever. And I think there's this another sentiment that I've shared a lot about on Twitter where we became friends, which is that people have a lot of gripes with junior VCs.
Some people make that their identity, but yes,
people
do have a lot of that gripe.
Yeah, people get real worked up about speaking with junior VCs, and I'm 25. I've been at two funds. Both of them were very small, so I was able to be a decision maker. But you make assumptions based on title or age or experience about who may make decisions or not.
Young woman, small fund.
Yeah, and so many times people have been like outwardly and blatantly disrespectful to me because of assumptions made about my ability to make decisions or not. And I've watched a lot of people who are my peers, friends, junior VCs, be disrespected because of their role in the firm. And I think the thing that is easy to forget is that every firm on the inside looks different. And if you were awful to someone, they're going to make it known to the people that they work with that you were awful. And that's not going to help you.
Right.
And I've found, like, being a young woman, now I'm primarily like an angel investor, so it's a little bit different, but being at a VC fund, being a young girl who's earnest and smiles a lot and really friendly, I don't really present like the serious VC way,
Right.
which I then leads for some people to take me less seriously. And I don't care. For a while, I think I let some other people, other women, sort of try and convince me that my personality needs to be different, less chatty. I'm not going to do that.
Imagine how sad that would be, right? Like,
It would actually be a
wouldn't be
tremendous
you.
hindrance to me.
It would literally be you masking who you are.
Yes.
Right. So it'd be like you entering the world, and this is a very sadly real thing, right? For so many people, and especially I think, as you say, and so many of others have so many stories to share, right? Young or women or young woman or young woman of color or young woman with a diverse background or different preferences. It's like, holy cow, right? That eventually you would literally become a caricature of someone else, some other version of, and then I can't, but like imagine going home at night, right? And then trying to reconnect with who you actually are. I mean, it would be immensely destructive, I would assume.
I think you would lose who you are. I don't.
Right.
I maybe that's just who I am. I don't know how to not be me.
Right.
And I think if I had to act all day as someone else, I would also go home as someone else. Like you'd be lost. And it would be the same for you.
Oh, 100%.
I can't imagine you not being friendly.
No, and in fairness, there's a core thread of me at now almost 56 that has always been this, right? That has had these traits and qualities, but then like all of us, the different eras in our lives and different stages, ages, you deal with more self-doubt, you deal with trying to fit in professionally or this club of people, et cetera. But yeah, the great kind of reawakening for me that happened in my mid 40s was just reconnecting to this, like, wait a minute, like this is the best. This is how I was like 0 to 16. And then from like 16 to, I don't know, maybe mid 20s, I was still this, but I was like suppressing it because I was trying to be a bunch of other people for a bunch of other people. And now I'm like, no, I'm just going to go back. And then you have the advantage of age and, things that I can play into that are like, okay, cool. Like I can not give a fuck. And most people are going to be like, well, yeah, sure. He's 56. He shouldn't give a fuck. Like, good for him. Right. I want to be that way. But that's one of also the things that is so admirable about you in our friendship is just that you're not like, you're 25. Right. And so if anything, like part of me and audience, just so you know, like I pestered her to be on the show with me so we could have this conversation because I want to just pour in because like, holy crap, if we can get you to stick with this, right. And you can really believe in yourself genuinely and see like literally like this show becomes a mirror and someday you watch it back and you're like, okay, aside from how you might feel about your jacket or your blouse or your hair today, like you look at it and you go like, that's me, like you did about your intro, right? Like that is me. So when you're 29 and you're having some doubts or 32 and you're strewn about the world a little bit because it's kicked you in the ass too much, like this will be literally like a documentation, like a picture of us from our best moment in high school prom or something, right? Whatever our best moment was. And you look back and you're like, I like that person.
It's funny you say that. So yesterday was Mother's Day. I lost my mother when I was 20. And I think that's like a huge core element to why I approach life in the way that I do. And on Mother's Day, that year that I lost her, I went on a road trip and I posted this picture of myself from my road trip. And in the caption on Instagram, it said, allow yourself to feel and experience joy and love today. It's the best medicine. I love everybody. And I read that and I thought, damn, 20-year-old Erika was wise beyond her years.
That's what I'm saying.
Because it's still something that I would say now.
And maybe in retrospect, that's one of many, and I'm sure there are many, but that's one of many gifts that your mom gave to you in that otherwise unfortunate, sad experience, right? Is that we all as parents leave our kids with some gift somehow. Right. Totally. And that was probably one of them, is that she cemented your belief that you could be this way and pass through the rest of the world. That's awesome. All right. So you have a unique base for you to stand on. And one of the things that I also find fascinating about you that some people might think like, that's totally normal. She's young, she's passionate, progressive. Like, of course she's advocates for other, but that's not always an of course for me. Like I see lots of young people who kind of break through to a certain stage of their career and then it like their advocacy for others and their passion about causes and stuff kind of takes a back seat because it's like, aha, I've arrived, right? Like now I'm getting mine. Like this was the whole goal. But you have a thread in you. So you're a huge advocate for access and equity for women, for folks who identify as LGBTQI plus, for undersupported founders of color. Like, why does that advocacy mean so much to you?
I think something that I said a little bit earlier about when I first got to college, I was like, oh, I'm poor. I didn't know. There's typically people of color and people who are underrepresented are also underrepresented economically. And so there's like a deep personal tie to feeling like there is a lack of equity in how people move upwardly from like a class standpoint that I've cared deeply about forever because I'd had to find some way to do that. And I didn't, there was nobody really helping me, I guess, besides the government who paid for most of my college. But
right.
That's a big part of it. But I think too, my investment thesis is often, are you making something that's going to make the lives of as many people as possible better? Yes, no. Are you working in an economy or a market that affects a lot of people? Manufacturing affects a lot of people. Climate tech affects a lot of people. And so I think similarly, the reason why I want to uplift more underrepresented folks, because that's like a better view of who the world is.
Right.
It's not just Stanford, Harvard grads. It's also not people who worked at McKinsey. These are very small numbers in comparison to like what creates at least like the US economy, like who has the largest spending power in the household or in the world. Women, at least in the US, like women spend the most money.
I'll tell you, it's true outside the US as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like all of those things that to me can be so easily ignored by just like the people holding all of the cash. LPs, I'll call them that. That it's just it's bonkers to me, to be honest. I'm surprised often by the lack of interest in certain markets. Also, you know, in San Francisco specifically, like founders that went to Stanford or got into Y Combinator and, you know, all sorts of things, like they get a lot of attention. And I find that the people who build the longest lasting, most resilient companies are the people who just know stuff about them. And I would venture to guess that the people who know the most about how to commercially paint a warehouse are not going to be two young men who went to Duke.
Right.
Probably someone who's been commercially painting warehouses for 20 years.
Right. Yeah. Good for you. Because there's plenty of off-ramps in that view of life for you that most people wouldn't even like blink at to say, well, yeah, but if I'm too loud an advocate for this worldview, then those rich institutional people with all the cash are going to look favorably upon me, and they're going to be like, she's a rabble rouser, she's a troublemaker.
Don't get me wrong, I feel those fears. Like,
how do you process those?
Honestly, Rob, I feel like I have been quieter. To be honest, the more attention I get on me, the more like well-connected people I know, the more fear I have about certain things. And so I've been really navigating a lot like it's quite challenging.
Well, and I ask honestly, not to put you on the spot, but I ask because I suspect there are lots of people exactly like you who are also feeling those pressures and feeling that impact on who they are. Yeah.
You know, so for example, I am a Christian. I go to church. I find that to be like a really important part of my identity. I don't talk about it really. And a couple months ago, I started posting on my Twitter, like I go to a really beautiful, like large church in San Francisco. On Sundays, every once in a while, I'll post a photo of the room and I'll be like, hey, if you ever want to come, feel free. Send me a DM.
Good for you.
And I've literally brought like 15 people to church that are all like in the startup community.
Of course you have. Right.
And I know one of my friends,
the church is going to make you the ambassador.
No, one of my friends, his name is Nick Hubecker. He saw my tweet, came to church with me. We're pals now. But he said, oh, is the first two questions you ask people when you meet them is where do you bank and do you go to church?
I know. I work for ARC and the Lord. Right?
It's true.
There you go. How do we get more Gen Z and soon? So I'm in a household now. I told you before, I'm staying with some friends for a few weeks. And one of the things I love about coming to my best friend's house is being Uncle Rob to her two daughters. One just turned 16, and the other one's going to turn 13 next month. So I got the end of Gen Z, and then the Gen Alpha is going in the same group, right? So tell me, how do we get more, as someone who's dead in the middle of things out there, how do we get more Gen Z and then eventually Gen Alpha women working on the investment side of the technology world?
I think we need more women working at startups. The most recent Y Combinator batch, for example, was like 87% dudes.
Yeah, right.
And it's hard to watch. It's awesome to see the women that are on the teams. Also, 87% is not a proven stat, so like I would love for YC to tell me what it is. But I would say like it was
we'll just say a majority.
Yeah, definitely a majority of men. And I think in order to get more women investing, it's sort of like it needs to come from both sides. More women need to be deploying capital from an LP standpoint, number one. Large institutions like endowment funds, pensions, etc. Those asset managers have primarily been men. So that the more women need to work on that level. It's a very convoluted sort of industry. I actually don't even know how somebody would get a job at a place like that, so I cannot help there. But I think typically the decision makers on the institutional LP front are very male. And then also there's not as many women entrepreneurs and operators. Even at my company, I think we've tried very hard to diversely hire, still leans very heavily men. And it's a challenge. Honestly, women typically have lower risk profiles because they're the ones that have to take care of things when things go wrong in both the households, but also just generally like as single people, more risk averse, less willing to take big swings on paycheck or company's stability, etc. So I think that can be an effect. And also operators at startups don't really get the glory. And so this is something that Amber Illig from the council has spent a lot of time on, which is she invests in proven operators. So people that worked at companies before and like really showed that they could make stuff happen and have now started a company. But you work at a startup and you do all this work, your equity is generally worthless compared to what it is for the founders.
Right.
Like, we'll tell the truth.
Right.
And you probably don't get paid very much because you work at a startup. So you're like, why would I be doing this? And I think when people tell me like, I want to be in venture, I always say, just go build something.
Get in here, work in it and grow it, understand it, build the relationships, build the context. I like it. No, I think the real answer is just as you said, it's a multifaceted kind of from all ends of the spectrum of the industry. There need to be more entry points for women. And then, as you say, like companies can try to hire diversely, right? So you just got to keep trying and try harder and try and market a better story, make it a more attractive alternative to those people that might be by genetic profile, cultural history, like more risk averse, like tell that story that can appeal to those people. No, I like that. Super insightful. You mentioned YC, perfect segue for something I wanted to ask kind of out of sequence, but you had such fun stuff you did last couple of weeks online, right? So this is where I want to give you a chance to talk about one or two stories of, let you be cheerleader, right? So like, just talk about a couple of the great stories of young companies or founder teams that you interacted with this week. Because what she did, audience, is she literally like said, I'm going to celebrate you. If you get into YC, I'm going to like lavish you with gifts and show up and pump you up and hype you up. And then you did. So I saw some photos of you with like champagne and chocolates and give us a couple of examples of some teams that you did that for and kind of why you think they're awesome.
So I am on the sales team here at ARC. ARC is a startup banking platform, and ARC is a YC company. We were Winter 22, very proud of that. And a big part of my job is ensuring that the YC batch works with us. So it's really important. At the end of the last batch, there was a graphic that Y Combinator posted in which it displayed that my primary competitor was used by 73% of the previous YC batch. I hate losing. I I would say I'm not just like a naturally competitive person in most aspects. Like I don't really care about losing at a board game or a card game or pickleball with my family. I don't want to lose in this way.
Yeah.
And so I decided, what better way to not have that happen again than for me to get a very big head start. And so a friend of mine got into YC. His name is Joseph Johnson. His co-founder is named Bailey Spell. They have a company called LedgerUp, which is an AI-powered bookkeeper that takes place all over email. So you just CC LedgerUp in your emails, and then it'll complete a task for you, which is really fascinating.
Really cool.
And their product actually worked, which is crazy. And they got into YC. They sent me a text last week, and I said, I'll bring you a gift. And I was so excited about them getting in that I posted on my Twitter, if you get into YC Summer 24 and you live in San Francisco, I will personally come to your house or office or co-working space to bring you a gift and congratulate you in person. And I really want to win YC. I want to be their banker of choice. I want to help them. I get a lot of inspiration, as I said earlier, from helping entrepreneurs do the things that they want to do. In fact, I actually think that that's my life's purpose. And so this is a great way to kind of hit all the things I need. I want to make ARC more successful in the batch. I want to celebrate people for accomplishing like dreams of theirs. And so I went to see my friends and I brought them a gift. And then I went to see these two young men named Mark and Kumar, who are building a company called Merce, and it's a comic reader platform. And so it'll AI generate a comic. Like if you give it a story, it'll make like a manga style comic, and then it'll read it to you out loud in languages, any language of your choosing, with voices.
Like character voices.
Yes, different character voices.
Wow.
And the craziest part about this story, I went to their house and they were so nice and they're super young. I went to their house, they did their YC interview, and then the YC partners were taking a long time to get back to them. And they followed up and they were like, you don't have a product. Can you actually build anything? And Mark in 3 hours built like an actual live demo that worked, like a working demo. Wow. Posted it on Twitter and said CC at YC partners. Nice. I think maybe Dalton and Gary Tan. And then they got in. Well, and they said, the only thing you can worry about is what's in your control. And that was indeed in our control. And I was like, first of all, damn, you're so smart for being 21.
Right.
But
they would have been good friends with 20-year-old Erika.
Oh my gosh. What's crazy is that like I have the only job in the world other than being a VC where the only job I have all day is to talk to founders. All day long, all I do is talk to founders. That's why I have this job. It's the best job in the world. I'm able to do that. And I get paid. It's crazy.
Exactly. So let's talk about the guys that pay you.
Yes,
yes. So let's talk about ARC. So you mentioned ARC. I didn't know the YC22 story, so that's great. So let's talk about ARC, talk about what it is, what it does, what you do, and why people should care.
So ARC is a startup banking cash management platform for startups. We have both cash management and capital markets. So capital markets is venture debt. Cash management is obviously just banking. We started our company entirely as like a financing platform. In 2022, actually it was 2021, my co-founders, Nick and Dawn, they were in business school together and they were meeting all these people at Stanford who were going to start companies, and they came from private equity and banking and consulting. And they were like, nobody knows about like different types of financial instruments and levers you can pull to grow your business. Everybody just thinks like equity. And so they were like, what if we just did debt? And so that's how they started. At the time, interest rates were very low. Capital was very cheap. Everybody was taking debt because it was really easy to get. When debt becomes expensive, it's very hard to pay off. And Don and Nick, almost 2 years ago now, kind of realized this was a really good business at the time that we started it, but this is not like a resilient, like billion-dollar company that we want to build. So how can we still serve the startup community with something that they need? And they took a bet, which paid off tremendously, which was, we're going to build cash management, because the only version of like a true boutique banking experience for this particular community is SVB, Silicon Valley Bank. And they launched a cash management product in early 2023, maybe like late 2022.
Good timing.
And then in March of 2023, Silicon Valley Bank crashed, and we suddenly were like, holy smokes, there is a space for what these people want, which is a high touch, very involved boutique bank experience with modern UI and people that understand what you're going through. And so,
which to give you some historical context, long before you cared, that what you just did right there, that was the Silicon Valley Bank pitch to me in 1998. And that's why we banked with Silicon Valley Bank in 1998 during my first startup, right?
yep.
Because they sold us on that, and that in its competitive arena at the time was completely unique.
And I think, now what I do here at ARC, I run startup banking for the West Coast. So I am on the sales team. I have a quota, but I have a bunch of accounts, and I am their primary contact. And so, the amazing thing about working here at ARC is that our smallest customer, has a few $1,000s. They just incorporated, they just opened a bank account. Our biggest customer has upwards of 100 million. And so I get to serve people of all stages and all types. Obviously, like, I love early stage founders. They're so fun, but we are truly the bank that can scale. And so it's been really fun to work on this with them, with my team. I joined the team because the chief revenue officer was like, hey, would you maybe want to work here? And I was like, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea. And it's really fun because the chief revenue officer, his name is Bazil Senesi. He's an angel investor. I'm also an angel investor. We co-invest on deals together. It's really fun. And we both get super excited about companies that are growing and making stuff. And it's just so lucky that I get to do this. You can find us at joinarc.com. But it's super fun. You can always just reach out to me too.
That's terrific. You found a place where you maybe previously thought like, oh, the only place I could do what I love to do, like talk to young entrepreneurial founders all day, is that space over there. And then you found this adjacent space, and you were like, oh, wait, and maybe there's another adjacent space someday. But what you're honing in on is that the transferable part of all of this is you and your gifts and your skills that you've worked really hard to hone and sharpen. And then some of the gifts that you were given that you've just like allowed to grow in you. But it's really cool to see. And thank you. Now we know about ARC, because I didn't. Thanks. Because when you first started with ARC, and I did my Uncle Rob diligence of like, where's she going to work? What's she going to do? Right. I was like, debt lenders, like and I'm like, oh, okay. And then as I followed along and kind of you guys have updated and refreshed the story a bit, I'm like, okay, now I know who they are and where they fit. And this makes total sense for you. So good for you. It's awesome. Last question in this kind of main section, and it toggle a little bit back to the investment side, but again, not pigeonhole you because you are an angel investor or because you worked in venture or maybe someday would be back in that world, but just because you have this broad view. Talk to me about, and this is again from kind of the generational shift standpoint, like talk to me about what you see the next 10 years of, maybe we'll call it early stage investing or early stage investing and services. Like, what do you see this next 10 years look like as a result of an influx of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, people who are basically just going to be even more adventurous, progressive thinkers than you are? Does the industry squash everybody and just go, no, this is the way we've always been? Or are we at a moment where like 10, 15, 20 years from now, we start to look back and go, oh, there was a generational shift in how all this stuff happens?
I think similar to what I said earlier is that change unfortunately happens from like the tip top. And so we are going to continue to see people sort of trying to bring in new strategies in how investing is done. But I think a really great example is someone who is like an outside of the box thinker and has not really been. I have a friend, his name is Bryce. He runs a fund called NDVC. He's been trying to raise money for NDVC for 20 years, basically. Yeah. In which the strategy behind it is they invest in companies and they want the companies to be pursuing profitability from day zero. What a crazy concept to LPs. Just absolutely crazy. And they're seeing really great results already. And it's so funny to me that new ideas are so unconvincing to those making decisions because it's easier to do the least amount of work. Mm-hmm. And so what I envision we will see is sort of this like middle of the road fund size, like LP, like a family office or a lot of like very rich tech individuals are going to start investing in smaller vehicles that are taking different approaches. And I think it'll take 10 to 20 years for those approaches to become mainstream. And the mega funds are going to continue. But what I think, it's going to get easier and easier to build companies. Like, I hate to say it, like AI is really bringing quite a bit of change, and the easier it gets to build a company.
It's progressively gotten easier to build over the last 25 years, right? So
100%.
the cost of what it would have been involved for my first startup in 1998 to if I was doing something today is exponentially less.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there's going to be more and more companies. There's still going to be a lot of money, but I think how that money gets deployed is going to shift a little bit. I think we're going to continue to see sort of the early Andreessen Horowitz playbook, which was blog, brand, media company first, venture fund as like the action. I mean, I post every day on the internet. That is very tactical. First of all, I love it. But like I'm posting continuously, and I will for probably the next decade, because when it's my turn to go raise a venture fund, everyone is already going to know everything about me, how I think, the deals I have already done. That's how long I intend to do this for.
And then 10 years from now, they will still be going back and referencing this episode of the show.
Yes, they will. I literally read Fred Wilson's blogs from 2003 weekly. And so Mark Suster from Upfront Ventures has posted so many blog posts in the last 20 years. I've read every single one. Like, this stuff sticks.
It's literally, if done right, it's literally timeless. It's invaluable. I mean,
exactly. And so like, I think
it's an archive of you.
Exactly. And so I think we'll see a lot of that. But I also think like how the big boys do business is going to continue until the people at the top like literally retire.
I have said universally for 10 years now that most of and this is just my opinion about putting these words in your mouth, and it is related to both the venture / kind of investment tech industry as well as the larger world that we live in, that there are some parts of what we have right now that are just so fundamentally broken that the only way we will get to the other side of these things is literally by waiting out the greatest generation, the boomers, and then the older versions of my Gen X generation to die. Like literally there's just and then cross our fingers that all of you smart, talented, ambitious, progressive, thoughtful young people like are patient enough to wait out that death cycle. And then you shall inherit the earth, and then you will go about fixing it. But yeah, we're in a transitional period in history that some things can only be fixed or changed when the people that are the problem causers are gone. And there is no, as you said very articulately, there is no economic incentive for them to change. That's the key. No. That's so I've said this. And I've asked this of many women emerging fund managers, first-time fund managers on this show over the last 4 years is it more important for you to get a seat at the table, or is it frankly maybe just better for you to go build your own table? Right. And the answers toggle. I'd be curious. What would you think?
I would rather do it myself.
Yeah. And people know who they are when they answered this, but there are people who like I've got to fight for that seat at the table because then I want to change that table. And then there are people who are like, I don't care about that. That table. You know what I'm going to do? And this is the Bryce Roberts argument, right? And we already know, and we've got a great story in common because Bryce inspired Will Stringer here in LA and Chiso's capital. Right. Will's invested in me, and we are huge believers in everything and we're glad to see Bryce is back. Kind of trying to make his way again, right? Because there needs to be advocates like Bryce, like Will, like others, to create this new table, right? Because then what we've just created, and I've used this phraseology, and it may be technically incorrect, but I think it paints the picture, is like we've then just said that, hey, wait a minute, okay, so you've got your asset class, which is like largely top-down, old, hyper-educated, elite university white people investing in other elite university privileged top white people. Like, that's cool. That's your asset class. And then we've created a whole nother asset class community over here, right? In which we're women investors investing in women, and then we're people of color investing in people of color, and then we're even more narrow need, they're just literally different asset classes. Like they're just different. I mean, they're not technically, I understand that, but like for all intents and purposes, they become separate tables.
Like the startups maybe are the same asset class, but like everything above that takes place, I think, has to be approached differently.
No, I 100% agree. That's super insightful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, last question. You're a young. I'm not going to give you a lifetime credit yet, but you're a young sales pro, and you are a pro, right? And you remind me of me at 25, which is awesome. But so we both know that founders, entrepreneurs, early stage startup companies, like building sales teams or even hiring salespeople is a struggle. Like, so I want you, for startup leaders, for your founder friends, for your first timers, your repeat guys, like who are looking to build strong sales teams, what are 2 to 3 essential qualities or skills that they should prioritize when they're hiring?
The first one, underrated, and no one will probably ever say this, is frame control. So when you are speaking to people, you want them to listen to you. If you have good frame control, you control how they listen and what they hear. When you're interviewing salespeople, when you're getting to know them to hire them, because I don't think it's really just an interview when you're hiring a salesperson. Like, this person is about to become the most valuable person at your company, maybe besides the CTO. If they are driving top line revenue, like that is the number one metric that you point to when you want to go raise more venture capital. You need to get to know them very well, but also they need to be able to make you hypnotized. Like, because if they can hypnotize you, because you know everything about your product, they can hypnotize a customer. And that is with frame control. So being able to orient how a story is told, how someone interacts with your product, how they learn about your product, asking them the correct questions to then drive answers that are favorable to you. Like, all of that stuff is very important in a seller, and you know who's good at it by talking to them generally. Number 2, like obvious to some and not obvious to others, is obsession with a customer. I just spoke to a recent hire at a startup. They had been there for a couple months, and I asked him, "Oh, how many customers have you spoken to?" They were hired as like the first sort of growth hire. And he was like, "Oh, we haven't started doing that yet." And I lost my marbles, lost them. They were gone. You have to care about the customer. Like, that is the North Star number one thing you should be doing all the time. Like, I talk to customers every single day at ARC. I'm never not pitching ARC. And you really have to want that. And some people get really caught up in systems and CRM and how to set up the product. No. Yeah. If you're hiring your first salesperson, that person needs to have a strong desire and urge to spend all of their time with their customers. That's going to be most effective, in my opinion, for those early hires. You absolutely need someone to run the systems, the architecture, the infrastructure, all that stuff. Really important. That is not the job of your first sales hires. Like, that's not their primary objective. Their primary objective is talk to customer, get customer to give money.
Yep.
Rinse, repeat.
Is there a third? Is there a third essential quality or skill? I mean, those two pretty much cover it. Like, if you hire for those two,
they should do a good job.
The likelihood of their success is exponentially higher than not. If you don't hire for either, go for it.
A lot of people want to hire a sales leader right away. You need to hire a salesperson that can become a sales leader.
Which I would say that's 2A in your list, because what you were describing in number 2 was essentially, without saying it until just now, is don't hire the vice president of sales.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Because that person is used to having other people do their work.
Exactly. And you think you need systems. You think you need the CRM. You think all those tools and how we going to use our Salesforce AI. But that's actually not important.
Correct.
Yeah. You can always catch that stuff up later. And frankly, as you alluded to earlier, with the increase in the use of AI, like a lot of those processes can become automated. So you're a gift. I know for a fact that in recent months, like, you coming and spending 55 minutes talking to me on essentially a Zoom was not the top of your list of things to do in your life. And yet you did it. And when we talked about this, you were like, I don't know, I'm not a huge podcast. I was like, I get it. I don't care. I just want you to come and hang out with me and have a conversation about the things that we're passionate about. And you just absolutely over delivered right now.
Thank
So
you.
I had so much fun. I'm so grateful for your time, for your life experiences, for your unique perspective. Don't ever change. Don't ever go home at night and have to shed being someone else, some other caricature that you play during the day. ARC is lucky to have you. The industry is lucky to have you. I don't really never cared where you live, because the truth is you can get on planes and cars and automobiles, and you do that, and you're all over the place, and you use the internet masterfully to extend your reach and your impact on people's lives. So thanks for coming and hanging out with us today.
I'm excited, and thank you for having me. It was really fun.
My pleasure. How can people find you or follow you on social? We've already told them, but in case they weren't paying attention, and then how can people find or follow ARC if they need the services?
You can find me on Twitter at Bricky What. My last name is Brick with a Y at the end. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the podcast episode name. So Bricky, the word what. Nice. And then you find me on LinkedIn at Erika Bricky. And then ARC is joinarc.com, and you can find all of our socials on our website. And I am Erika at joinarc.com if you ever want to reach out.
That's awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Amazing.
Have a great rest of your day. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.